What's up, guys, and welcome to a new episode of Raw Conversations. And we have Alma on here. Alma, say what's up.
Hello. Hi, Ricky. I'm
Hello.
looking forward to our call.
Me too. So today we're talking about inner conflict, ending, ending inner conflict, and feeling whole, and how to balance your masculine and feminine energy. And this is perfect because we both love this topic. I always get insights from you when we talk about this.
I often have clients come to me with a main focus around relationships,
Okay.
that they're dealing with conflict in their relationships where they don't feel seen and heard. Um, and so with that, I always bring it back to the core, and that is the relationship with ourselves. So that is what I focus on the coaching, is actually not technically with the relationship with others, but really with the relationship with ourselves and our feminine, masculine dynamic within ourselves and how they're communicating to each other,
Hmm.
and supporting each other.
Got you. So a lot of times it's easy to get sucked into the drama with another person and be like, it's their fucking fault, or they just don't get me, or they don't understand me. But really, when problems are coming up in your relationships with other people, it's time to take a step back and see what's going on inwardly with your masculine and feminine energy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And this is why we feel triggered, right? And it's really just one of these energies or both of these energies feeling triggered within us when it comes to relationships on the outside.
Gotcha. What are some helpful tools that you like to have people do, or what are some tips you've offered to people that you work with on calls?
Personally, I do like to identify whether it is the feminine and masculine for them because I identify the feminine as the being part, um, and I identify the masculine as the doing part. So one's more nurturing and loving, and the other is more action and purpose focused.
Mm.
Um, and so an example would be with a client that I had last week was when she came to me and she was having issues with her husband where she didn't feel seen and heard, and it was to do with her purpose stuff. So I know that it was actually she was dealing with conflict with her masculinity,
Mm.
where that it wasn't feeling seen and heard, and as a result retreated, right? So that she's pulling back on her masculinity. But as a result, that's also wounding the feminine because we cannot have one healed energy, one healthy energy
Mm.
without the other. They need to both be supporting each other, um, and being aligned. Otherwise, they're either both wounded and become unbalanced.
Gotcha. So it was her, it sounds like she was a very feminine woman, and she actually needed to exercise her masculine side in that scenario with the husband. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And
And if she didn't, that was causing dysregulation in her body, and she was like pushing part of herself down. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, she was, yeah, holding herself back. So the work that we did together really revolved around tuning into her feminine, see how she's feeling inside of her being,
Hmm.
but then also, okay, how can we nurture the masculine? And that's where, the feminine comes in handy, is being able to nurture the masculine, to hold the masculine, to make that masculine feel seen and heard. And then an action step that was taken to heal the masculine is the communication in that case scenario.
Mm.
So it's a lot of communication and boundary work, and that's more of a masculine energy, that assertiveness, and to really communicate our wants. And I really associate that I want with the masculine energy, the solar plexus energy. It's
Mm-hmm.
the I want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's also communicating our needs as well. Like, I need support. I need you to tell me that you've got me. I need to hear that you support me in my journey, in my purpose. I need that. And I want to create this business. I want to create this goal. I want to serve people in this way. And I need to feel supported in that with you.
Right. That's powerful. How would you suggest women go about it if they are feeling like they need support? Like, how should they, like, what if they have resistance to asking for their needs and for their wants?
Which is a common theme, right? Both for women and men to communicate
Right.
their wants and needs.
I feel like it's hard for sometimes very feminine women to then shift into being assertive, which is like when you're asking, like, I want, and kind of like putting that forward is like when it's time for
Mm.
you to be assertive in the relationship.
Yeah. I mean, with that, yeah, it takes vulnerability and courage. Those are the ingredients.
Mm.
But the first step is really identifying that, like, what needs am I not meeting? And we had this discussion before, in terms of the Maslow's hierarchy needs and the foundation needs. Um, or we kind of look at it from a root chakra point of view, depending if we want science or spirituality,
Right.
that at the core of that is the emotional needs and the physical needs, the emotional
Okay.
safety and the physical safety. So we need to acknowledge, check in with ourselves and acknowledge which needs am I not meeting from both of my physical and my
Mhm.
emotional. And we see that emotional is more to do with femininity and the physical is more to do with masculinity. And so it's like, what needs am I not meeting um in me, and how do I get those met? If I cannot meet them, right, which I always say the first call to go to is to meet the needs ourselves,
Mhm.
right? So we can really um not we can really pull back on dependency.
Gotcha. Mhm.
Um, but in situations where we're not able to, for example, in emotional needs where we have tried to regulate, or we've done those meditations, or we've, you know, done breath work, gone for walks, and we're still dysregulated, then it's like, well, I've tried myself, I've given it a best shot, but I really need emotional support. I need regulation. I need support from others. And we can often find that from a partner as well. If we're
Mhm.
fortunate, of course. Well, we have to communicate that, right? Um, and it's the same with the physical needs. Like, can I meet them myself? Or am I perhaps not at the moment able to meet myself for some reason? Like, I'm not able to find a job. I'm not having enough income coming in. Whatever the reasons may be, again, then reaching out, I need this, I need
Mhm.
support in this. Would you be willing to support me? And I feel like those are really two, yeah, really important to ask ourselves, really, and just reflect, even daily, to reflect what needs am I want to be met, what needs need to be met, really,
Yeah.
that haven't been met yet. So I definitely recommend that. And then being able to communicate on any needs, or take action on the needs that we need to meet if we can, but otherwise reaching out to the support around us with that communication, with those two ingredients of vulnerability and courage, and say,
Mhm.
look, this is what I need. I'm being vulnerable right now and I'm communicating this because
Right.
I'm reaching out because I do need it, and I really do need support and feeling understood, seen and
Mhm.
heard.
Right. Yeah, I think it's good to remember it's not needy to have needs, because I think a lot of people don't mention their needs because they're like, well, I don't want to come off as needy. And I think the formula for that is that's where the inner work comes in. It's like kind of like for me, if I'm mad or if I feel dysregulated with my emotions, it's okay, put the problem in a sentence so I know what the problem is. And then from there, it's like, okay, what do I need in that case to feel better? And then, like you said, which I love that you brought out, is courage and vulnerability. Like you need both of those. And that's hard. I mean, it's a challenge for me too. It's like to be vulnerable. And I think for a lot of guys, but and I've actually learned this from women and just like having good women in my life and just hearing them confidently ask for support. They're like, I need support. And I'm like, well, if these chicks could ask for support, like, why am I not asking? I need some fucking support too. Like, what the fuck? So yeah, I think that's important. I think like for men too, and I kind of want to get into this of shifting over to the masculine, because I know you see a lot of issues in the manosphere as well of men and having issues, and I think that's one for me is getting in touch and being okay with my feminine side and being okay with that. And I think a lot of guys need to start being okay with that. I think like in society, that just needs to be something that is just okay. Doesn't mean if you're in touch with your feminine side that you have to suck a dick, but you do have to acknowledge your emotions and realize that, like, yeah, I'm an emotional creature. Like, behind this wall, this armor of like keeping everyone at arm's length distance, I actually am an emotional creature. And that's scary because if you haven't really acknowledged that or taken care of yourself emotionally for years on end, or what you weren't taught growing up, that's going to be a bit shocking and it's going to feel very like weird feeling vulnerable.
Mm.
But I feel like that's where um, you have that deeper connection in your relationships with the people around you, whether it be like romantic or the friends or business wise. Like everything in this world is operated off of having good relationships and being successful at creating and maintaining good relationships around you so that you can grow and thrive in your purpose. Um, yeah. So what do you see as far as the struggles with men having to be vulnerable, and then like what are some tips that you would suggest to make it easier for guys to be more vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important point, which I'm super passionate about because, again, we had this conversation earlier, um, just about the impact from this is just one point of view, the impact that fathers have on their children when they're not in touch with their femininity. Like, that's
Mhm.
super important because, as I've mentioned, our parents become our inner parents, right? So in
Right.
childhood, they're parenting us, and as we grow, they become the inner parents in us. They become the feminine, they become the masculine.
Yeah, I see that
And
as not to cut you off, but real quick, I see that in myself as I get older. Like I see my parents like when they were like 40 years old and how they responded to things, and I see that come out of me. Sometimes not in the best way, when I encounter a new situation I haven't encountered before. Like I'll say something my mom said that like when she said it to me as a kid, I didn't like that, right? But I'm just like repeating it because that's the training that's just wired into me.
right.
So what happens when a father isn't in touch with their feminine side? Like how does that affect the child growing up?
So when the father is very reserved in his masculine, is very in his masculine, and he's not cultivating his femininity, he's not integrating it and seeing it as important, um to be in his feminine energy at the same time. um I know what happens, and what I've seen also in clients is they will have the similar approach to their fathers. So they may be very career focused, but they haven't got compassion for themselves. So they're often falling in burnout. So that's just one
Mhm.
example of this extreme masculinity where
That's
we're not,
huge.
yeah, when femininity is not included, is that, you know, it's very career focused, and there is a lack of compassion, keep burning out, um, and isolating as well. There's a lot of isolation because it's like I can't ask for support. There's a lot of that masculine pride, right? Because of when without that balance and compassion, it's like, well, no, I need to be able to do it myself. I need to make every decision correct. I need to be able to lead without support. I need to be able to not make mistakes. And if I don't do that, well, I haven't got my feminine to support me, right? I haven't got the compassion energy there. So what's going to
I'm
happen
not going to
then?
get love. Yeah, I'm not going to get my needs met. I'm not going to get love. Who's going to love me? Yeah, I feel that. That's huge. And I definitely know I probably still struggle with those things at a certain level. But I know like 2 or 3 years ago, I massively struggled with that, where it's like I had to be right. Like I have to know what's going on. I have to always be in charge and have all the answers and like like be the strong and silent type. And I still struggle with that. And part of me is like I don't always want to throw all my emotions around, to be fair. But I do see the value of being able to communicate better emotionally and what at least be able to communicate to the people around me what's going on emotionally. And if maybe I need space to like let them know, like, hey, I'm just going through some shit, but I need some space to integrate it myself and then I can talk about it.
Mm,
Something to that extent. So because yeah, it's fucking you put yourself in a prison. And I think that's where a lot of guys are dealing with loneliness and like the rise of suicide in men is rising because it's like they can't communicate. And then there are all the examples around them to just be like strong and silent and buried. Like, I did that for years, just growing up, just bearing any emotional problems I had. And then it just made me not able to connect with people. And then I just come off as a robot and, yeah, you're not human. You're not connected to your heart. Yeah.
exactly, right? And so, and that's a good point there, is like that heart energy is the feminine energy. And then the
Mm,
intelligence is more to do with masculinity, right?
gotcha. Yeah.
Um, and another point that I would like to make on that is, the feminine, masculine doesn't necessarily mean mother, father, because in some cases, we see that the mother has the stronger masculine and the father plays the more feminine role. So I just want to add that point as well. So we can, acknowledge who's playing the feminine, who's playing the masculine within us, right? Because it can be our mother playing the masculine role.
Mm,
This is a super important point, as you said, with the loneliness, and just higher cases of suicide. It's true. And I've also seen that. And, with the men that I've spoken to, this really is the case. Um, and what I see at the core is, with all of this, and again, with women and men, is at the core of this, at the core of our dysregulation, there's sadness. And,
mm-hmm,
the emotion sadness actually, when we connect to it, we realize actually it teaches us to let go.
mm,
But when we don't let go and we hold on to that through resentment, we it turns into stubborn sadness. And
okay.
stubborn sadness is another term for pride, or
Gotcha.
stubborn pride. It's this stubborn sadness, like, no, I'm not shifting out of my how I feel. I'm not shifting my perspective, you know, like, no,
Mm,
like, look, it's true. No one wants to support me. I know it. Where are they? Where are the people? It's this stubborn sadness that we carry along that actually prevents us from healing and feeling connected.
right. And then that reinforces your experience, right? Like if, oh, no one's supporting me, I feel sad. And then that is the belief that's operating. And then that's what is going to be reflected to you in your reality too, because that's the emotion that you're putting out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's big to for a lot of people to know about, yeah, stubborn sadness and knowing how to shift and let go of emotions. And I think part of it too is like is having the courage to just sit with your emotions. And I think it's hard because it's like we want to hide. I know for me, I cared like when I was younger, like I always cared what people think. Even when I'm having my own emotional experience, I'm like, well, how does this make me look? Right? It's always the trying to fit into the tribe or the social context. If my friends saw me sad right now, what would that make me? But really that's me judging myself on my emotional experience. And so that's why I feel like, things like meditation and breath work really help, like especially meditation of just being able to sit with the emotion. And that was able to teach me how to build intimacy with myself, of being able to sit with an emotion, feel my judgment come up, and be like, oh, I'm judging myself right now. Okay, well, that's me too. So I'm going to sit with that part of me too. And I'm just going to love that part of me too. Oh, I'm
Mhm.
sad right now. Okay, well, I'm going to be with that sadness. Oh, it feels uncomfortable. It's very subtle. Okay, well, I'll just be with it and I'll just love that part of me too, because we are emotional beings that can experience the full spectrum of emotion. And that was one thing too. It's like if you can't cry, you're kind of numbing yourself to experiencing other intense emotions like joy or having orgasms or all that. So it's like you need to be able to cry and have those deep releases so that you can expand and feel more joy, feel more bliss, because
Mhm.
that's life is duality. You have to be able to experience the good and the bad. And then you can I know for me recently, like I've had depression since I was like 14, but now I have like such a good relationship with depression where it's not like this overbearing thing. And I think maybe that's just me working on the narrative of what is depression. But now it's like a day. Like today, it's kind of gray and cloudy outside. And so like when depression pops up, instead of being like, oh, I have depression and beating myself up, it's like, oh, it's a gray and cloudy day. Cool. What can I do from this state that would be creative or fun? Which reminds me, I'd like to get into because I know you're very passionate about creative expression and people expressing themselves. Um,
Yeah, I
can you
mean,
talk a little
before,
bit about that?
yeah, I mean,
But
before we go on to that, I would just
yeah,
like to say, for even for the audience who will listen, is that sometimes it can be really difficult to feel compassion for yourself, to feel empathy for yourself, because that is what it
right.
takes to heal suppressed emotions. It takes empathy.
Yeah,
It takes empathy for our feminine, it takes empathy for our masculine, so we can be in stillness and be able to move forward from a place of our being. But when
that's
we
huge.
don't have that compassion and empathy, and we're like, well, I'm trying to feel compassion, I'm trying to feel empathy, but nothing, I feel so empty, right? Because we've gotten so used to avoiding our emotions and being hard on ourselves for so long.
Mm,
It's like,
hmm.
I think it's, that's a really important message that I would like to put out there is to
Right.
reach out to people if you're at that point, right? Where
Hmm.
you have your levels of empathy is really low, to reach out to people and for the support of your feminine and masculine or either or, um, because that's what I've had to do in my journey as well. I'm like, right now I need support in my masculinity, for example, because I'm having a lot of trouble every time I start something, I become dysregulated and something that I'm
Hmm.
passionate about or whatever it is, a project, or just even the small action steps in life. Sometimes I've become dysregulated because I don't have a good relationship with my masculinity, because it didn't have that environment to feel encouraged, um to feel nurtured, to feel
Hmm.
like, you go ahead, you're doing great. If you make mistakes, that's okay, that's totally normal, you're human. And
Hmm.
so sometimes we need support from others if we can't give that to ourselves, to provide that environment for us. And being able to communicate, like, what I really need, whoever you can speak to, what I really, whether that's a coach or a friend or a family member, what I really need is to just be in an environment and for you to just be there with me, with this part of me.
Right. I think
And
it's just powerful being able to hold space for someone and feeling the other person not judging you, because that can help you kind of like turn off your own judgment or like perfectionism or self-hate that we all struggle with. I have those. Like as much as I love myself, I get hard on myself or my perfectionism comes out. And that's just like a constant, I feel like yoga with me that I get a little bit better at daily. You know, it's like, oh, here's my perfectionism. Okay, like let's do a little bit better at it, you know. And like you said too, like a lot of us weren't raised to know how to give ourselves compassion going through those things. And so we're having to learn to teach ourselves. And it's a slow process, but I would say, because I know like some people will be like, I don't need, like, I can love others, but I don't even know how the fuck to love myself.
really
And,
common.
and, and I get that. And so it's like, the first step is to be able to ask for help and find people that you can talk with and will hold a space for you so you can work through those emotions with no judgment, no self hate, and will guide you if you fall into perfectionism or self hate or being too hard on yourself. So you can learn what it feels like when you are compassionate to yourself, when you are being vulnerable and you do feel safe at the same time. And I
Right.
think that's huge. And if anyone
Yeah.
needs help with that that's watching this, Alma, I believe, is doing some free sessions that you can book with her as well. So you can book a call with Alma and she'll help you with emotional expression.
It's Ricky. Definitely. No, definitely a good point there. Um, and yeah, it's also the same for femininity is what I also want to add to my last point, which is sometimes I need someone to hold space for my femininity in my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that can just be more connected with stillness. And we often find that again, another common thing is like when we're laying in bed or not working or whatever it is, there's a lot of guilt that comes across and it starts to dysregulate us so much that we actually get up and start doing something, even if it's not really productive, whether that's cleaning, um, whether that's just, killing the time off so we don't have to put attention on the uncomfortable emotions that are coming up, the uncomfortable sensations.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's like we're having to have, if we can't provide that ourselves, the support, then ask that from someone, like allow them to help you
Mm-hmm.
by communicating what you need. Like, I need to feel safe to be still. I need to feel safe to be in my being and not have any expectations of myself, which are not really my expectations, but my conditioned expectations, right? The expectation that's been conditioned in me and just need to be held. I need to be reassured that I am safe, that I don't need to do anything, right? And so I feel like that's also a really important part. So it's this, as you can see, that's why it's so important to understand this feminine and masculine energy within
Mm-hmm.
us, like, to do with the stillness where we can't be still, as well as our masculine where we can't move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and at the end of the day, it comes down to one simple thing, which is if our nervous system is dysregulated, which again is very common, for so many reasons, um, it's just saying that I need an environment to feel safe in, right? Whether that's the environment that we can give, because I also see our body as our environment, right? And we're
Yeah.
giving and we're allowing our body is the environment, but if we cannot cultivate that within, then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I need an environment outside of me that allows me to feel safe. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is about communicating.
Yeah. That's huge. I love
Yeah.
that. Let's talk about emotional expression. Segue to that because I know you're big on that, and I know you like to do integrative dancing and even some rage dancing. rage dance. We've done a rage dancing session together, and that was a lot of fun. Um, what is the power of tapping into your expression and speaking your truth, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really big on expression, as you know, um, because how I see it, and this is also what I tell my clients, is what we see these emotions, which is, I look at it from a scale point of view. So we have the sadness, which is more of a vulnerable emotion. Then when that's not taken care of, we have layers of emotions that accumulate. So we have disgust and fear, and then shame, and then guilt, and then anger, and then rage. We have a scale of emotions. And at some point in our childhood, when we were shamed and that sadness was not taken care of, and then therefore the other emotions accumulate, what happens is when we were expressing ourselves, we were expressing joy, we were expressing love, right? And when we got shamed, we got triggered, turned into sadness because it hurt, and that's a vulnerable emotion. Like, it hurts in the heart,
Mm,
and that's how it's supposed to be. Like, I mean, that's how we're supposed to feel in terms of that vulnerable emotion. As you said, the polarity exists. That's the joy and the sadness. Um, but as I said, like, when it's not taken care of, that what happens is our expression turns inwards. So this is when we express, and then it gets turned inwards with disgust, shame, fear, um, guilt, wherever it may be.
yeah,
And so now it looks ugly, right? Is what we may say, right? Oh, these emotions are ugly, or I don't want these emotions, right? They're negative. And so, in our daily lives as an adult, where we're not allowing ourselves to express, we start to feel shame in those places. You can tell in our body, even in our expression, whether we're experiencing shame or guilt or anger. And it's because there is something that wants to come out,
mm,
that suppressed expression from childhood, that wants to come
mm,
out, but it now looks like a uncomfortable sensation. That's what's happening. Um,
gotcha.
and so that's what I like to tell my clients. These emotions are, these suppressed emotions are joy, love, passion, excitement. That's what they really are.
Yeah,
But we're not.
as you were saying that, it's like it's sad because it's like as a kid, you're expressing joy and love, and then you're getting shamed and negativity from it. And so now you've connected love, expression of love or joy, which we all want in life, which we all crave desperately more of, gets like silenced and pushed down within us. And we're scared to express it coming out because of how our upbringing was, because we were like, it was shoved down into us. So that's hard. Um,
Mm,
and I also feel like, I know for me, like I've had a lot of kind of like sacred rage or just like this masculine rage. And I'm sure, I think a lot of guys deal with this, and it's kind of scary because it feels violent inside and you don't want to express it because it feels violent. It's like the dark side of the masculine. But I know for me, I've just kind of like looked for a healthy way. And I know that's why I want to get into kickboxing training, because I know that's like a healthy outlet to express violence in. But for me, like the sacred rage, it's like putting that into my creativity, putting that into it. And that's where like, rage dancing or doing some type of dancing, kind of feeling in my body, getting it out, getting a lot of it out feels really healthy because then you're addressing it. But then also putting it into like my writing or my video or just like whatever I like to do creatively, because then you're channeling the energy. So at the end of the day,
mm,
it's raw energy, right? And then you can do things to kind of heal up the narrative or the story that's connected with it, because sometimes there's lessons for us to learn in it. But then you can put it into your creative expression, whether that's dance, music, writing, parts. And so I really encourage, especially guys or, even women too, that if you have rage, if you have those kind of dark or twisted emotions that you don't know how to deal with, see how you can maybe express those in a healthy creative outlet to, one, it's cathartic because it helps release that. And then two, you're you feel more comfortable and confident in yourself expressing that, getting to let that part of you out, and you're actually healing that side of you as you express it creatively.
Yeah,
So,
definitely a good tip there, Ricky.
so let's talk about integrative dancing. How has that helped you? And yeah, why should people get into integrative dancing?
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, is that when we have this suppressed expression, right? When we expressed ourselves in our childhood, it was joy and love, whether that be jumping on the sofa, whether that be making it, playing with in the mud, whatever that may be, that we may have got shamed for. And now it looks like, and the expressions turn inwards, and now it looks like these emotions, suppressed emotions. Integrative dancing has really helped me and is helping me to help me feel these emotions, to integrate them, honestly. So whether that be with rage, so when I feel rage and I'm not able to stay with it in my body because it's too uncomfortable, and that can also be because I haven't cultivated enough empathy for that specific emotion as well. Which is another point to add there, like with women, when we're young, when we're girls, often we can see that anger and rage are emotions that are really, really shame. Like, you're a girl, you shouldn't be doing that, and it really closes us off to feeling that emotion, that emotion that we should feel in the heart when a sense of injustice happens. We should be feeling that in the heart, but when we disregard it, when we say we can't and we don't accept it, and we can't experience this emotion, then it just, it's around the body, it's not felt in the heart because it's not accepted. Then it becomes very difficult to process. It becomes very difficult to hold that space, to hold empathy. This is just an example of one emotion, to hold that space in the heart. Because that's what it is. Suppressed emotions need acceptance.
Mm. So
Um,
say that again. Suppressive emotions need acceptance.
Suppressed emotions need acceptance, and
Yeah.
it can only be accepted if we feel them, right?
Mm.
We can't just think, oh, I want to accept it. We have to really feel it in our body, in our heart. Like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm giving you the space to be present. I'm accepting you. You're welcome here. I love you. I'm sorry that I haven't given you this attention before. Like, I'm here now.
Hmm.
This is really important. But as I was saying, when we're not able to do that because it's just really, we've really cut that off from our body, from feeling in our hearts, right? Because we're really shamed that part of ourselves. This is where integrative dancing has really helped me. So
Nice.
I'll put on a song, rage music, whatever that may be for you, where, you're getting into that masculinity as well, because, we often see anger and rage associated with masculinity. And so it's, about, because it wants to move forward, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I will vigorously move my body. And what's happening is that the energies that are stuck in the body, right, because of that long time of suppression is just stuck on the surfaces of our body, and so deep within. So it's like we need to move it. We need to move that, and so I
Yeah.
start to vigorously move it and express anger and rage,
Hmm.
and allow myself to feel the anger and rage. That's the key point, is by doing this movement is allowing me to feel it because the energy is moving about and I'm expressing it. And with that, then it's like, well, there you go. I'm holding space for it to be shown, to be expressed, to be felt through this movement. So
Yeah.
I can so I can accept it and integrate it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, I know for me, even like from an energetic perspective, because I know like 4 years ago when I started realizing that I was an empath, like really sensitive to emotions and energies. And I know that dynamic meditation or that sort of dancing helps a lot because it's breaking up vibrations. Like when you feel caught, and that's the problem with a heavy energy, like even like fear or something like that. When you start becoming aware of it, you notice that it has a certain like energetic signature, right? Where like I know sometimes for me it'll close up like my throat, like where I'm like I can't express myself, or like my confidence chakra or something like that, where it's like I feel this clench in my body that's making me down regulate and not act at my most confident self, which we all want to
Mm,
do, like our most empowered self, right? Being self empowered. So,
right.
and that's where like feelings of like unworthiness and all that come in, and that can stack upon it. And that's where you do feel like the doom and gloom, and kind of like where you're kind of
Mm,
walking with your shoulders over and all that. So
exactly.
by
And
by dancing it, you're breaking all those patterns up in your body. And that's what I love about it too, because I don't always like to necessarily, sometimes I do, and I did this earlier, but sometimes I don't have time to just sit with the emotion and like, okay, what does this mean about me? And that, and sometimes that's helpful and that is what you need to do. And other times I'm just like, I just need to intuitive dance and get this out of my system and then get into the state that I want to show up as, which is like confident, empowered, loving. And I think I wanted to make this point earlier was like doing these steps is like if you're like, well, how do I love myself? I don't know where to start. Doing things like this, where it's like the intuitive dancing, the meditation, or things you want to normally do, is how you begin to love yourself and you build that intimacy with yourself. And I think when
exactly,
I
yeah.
first, yeah, discovered meditation, I really liked it, and I sat with those emotions because sitting with those emotions and healing yourself in that way, is where you build that intimacy with yourself and you start developing that relationship with yourself because it forces you to have compassion and let go of the self-hate and let go of the perfectionism,
I love that.
even if it's just for that moment, right, where it's like you have to get into that. And then by doing that, you just treat yourself better. You're like, okay. And then as people interact with you, you hold space for yourself more. You're like, no, I'm
Mm.
not going to fall into like people baiting me into this, or no, I'm not going to take this from this person anymore. Like I'm going to, allow respect for myself now.
Yeah, I love that point. I really, really do, because that is what it's about. It's about creating the intimacy with yourself. It's about building, and to build that relationship with ourselves, we're creating intimacy with ourselves, right? So, me and my body, me as,
Right.
yeah, right, like me as my awareness with my body and my emotions and my heart and my head. And it's like, how
Mm-hmm.
do I create intimacy with that? How do I get a very rich inner life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and another point there as well is like what I often hear as well is like, I just want to overcome these emotions. I just want to get rid of them. I don't want to feel rage. I don't want to feel shame. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to feel these emotions. And an important point there, and you touched on it a little bit just then, is to get rid or overcome these emotions means to continuously deny and cut off these expressions of ourselves, which I said is our joy, is our love, is our passion.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what happens when we integrate, which means to accept, to cultivate, to make, so we become whole again, where you said as well, is like when we accept rage, we're
Mm-hmm.
no longer, head down, shoulders
Right.
like this, right? Because that's what it means to not integrate our rage and
Yeah.
anger. But
I think that's
instead,
where a lot of depression comes from, is suppressing anger. So then it's like and then it's like the depression is the
frustration, right?
anger taking it out on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And because we're not supported, we don't feel supported. And so we start to
Yeah.
feel frustrated, and then we feel powerless, and then we start just, it, giving up. And so, um, when we integrate that anger and rage, which I've mentioned to you before, is it we become assertive, we become
Yeah.
more empowered, and that's what it is. It's like It
And
may look
passion, I think that's where passion is like refined anger. It's more of a positive anger, right?
exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
it may look aggressive and not
Mm-hmm.
nice, but really what it is it's passion, it's
Mm-hmm.
assertiveness, um, it's being able to communicate um our needs, or or communicate boundaries, like no, like look, that really hurt me, like that made me feel like this, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like it's for good reason why we feel rage,
Yeah.
to protect us. So,
Right.
and the more we get better at, again with the scale of emotions, the more we get better at integrating rage and anger, and then how I work through it is down the scale, right?
Okay.
So I can get more closer and closer to the core. Um, because often I'll be in a I'll see myself in a state of anger or suppressed anger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's like me giving that part of compassion or expressing that part. So then I can
Mm-hmm.
get to the guilt and shame that's underneath it, because that's what anger is and rage is.
Gotcha.
It's really about what's underneath it, which is, the shame and or the guilt
Mm-hmm.
or the disgust or the sadness. So when we're working down the scale, um, as I do with my integrative dancing,
Mm-hmm.
is, then I'll get to the points of like shame. And
Mm-hmm.
that then looks different, perhaps my body movement or the music that I'm listening to feels different.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
for me, what I found in integrated dancing is when it comes to shame, my
Um,
body just wants to stop. Like I'll start expressing, it feels good. So what's happening is I'm letting off this excess energy. But once the
mm-hmm.
excess energy has released, then
Mm-hmm.
I feel the shame.
Okay.
And then at that point, my body just wants to go,
Right. So it feels heavy and wants to
right.
like draw me.
Because what does shame do? Shame disempowers us, right? It
Right.
it it just makes us want to like isolate, put our head down, and just kind of be just be hidden. Really, that's how it
Yeah.
really feels. And
So how do
so,
you work with it in your dancing? When that shame bubble comes up in your dancing and you feel like you're like, oh, I want to stop dancing. What do you do?
well, I'm not gonna lie, the first couple of times I was like, well, I just stopped,
Mhm.
until I understood the pattern. And that was I had to move through it. And that's
Gotcha.
again, is how shame shows up in our lives. When we feel shame through any circumstance or situation,
Mhm.
we want to withdraw instead
Gotcha.
of move through it, right?
Hmm.
Instead of communicate, and as an example, or move through it or take that action, we just want to withdraw.
Hmm.
Like it wants us to hide. So
Hmm.
when I feel that through the integrated dancing, then I start to I now start to move through it, and
Right.
it's uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie
Yeah.
to you, Vicky. It's uncomfortable.
No, I'm glad you're
Um,
bringing it up because like people need to know because I think that's the natural response. I feel shame. I want to withdraw, but that's the key to like become stronger is to move through it. So I'm glad that you're bringing that up and that you deal with that as well, right? Even though you help people with their emotions and with shame, that you're like, okay, this happens for me too, and I have to move forward through it, and it feels uncomfortable when I do. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, and once I move through it, so once I'm moving through it, I'm letting my body feel that it's okay to feel shame and move
Mm,
forward. And see, as you can see, that's how it's such an important thing to. It's so important because to be able to do this through dance, which I found for myself, because then I'm bringing that with me in my day to day.
yeah.
And that's what dance is providing me the space to integrate so I can feel that day to day. So when shame comes up now
Hmm.
in my day to day, I now know, oh, okay, shame. And for me to move through this and to heal this, I need to move. I literally do need to move through it. I need to like keep going on, if that
Right.
makes sense.
I feel like
You,
that goes back to what we talked about. our parents kind of become the masculine and feminine inside us. But in that scenario, that's like where you need to step up and be the parent for yourself and almost like being your body. And it's like how you regulate your mind. It's like your mind is still kind of being influenced by the shame coming up. But instead, it's like, okay, I'm going to tap into my body and I'm going to move through this as the parent, moving the child forward through it. And by doing that, I'm going to come out the other side of it stronger.
Right. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. And even with the when now disgust emotion comes up again, a very difficult emotion to feel if we have suppressed it. And depending on what the disgust is about, right? Whether that be related to being bullied or being
Mm-hmm.
criticized for something and being called gross or having sexual shame, um
Image issues, or yeah,
self-image
that's a big
issues.
one.
That's definitely a big one that we can see as a common theme. And so when we start to feel disgust in the body, again, I can speak from my experience, I
Mm-hmm.
just want to dissociate because I'm like,
Gotcha.
I don't like the feeling of disgust, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the root of that spectrum I was talking about, is that disgust on top of the sadness. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to feel this,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm dissociating, I feel disgusted in my body, like all these bodily triggers are starting to happen as I'm moving my body. And you know and so with that, then how I work through that is I allow myself to move through it as a way that I'm empowering myself, that I'm in control, right? Because there was
Gotcha.
times in my childhood that I wasn't in control, as an example. It's like
Yeah.
I'm moving through disgust, like I acknowledge that I have disgust and I'm empowering
Mm-hmm.
myself through it versus, being when I was shamed and for, what they may have seen as disgusting through their own projections and triggers. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I love this part about myself. Again, what is
Mm-hmm.
disgust? Our disgust is our suppressed love, passion, and joy. The
Mm-hmm.
expression of that was
Yeah.
shamed, right? So actually, no, I love
Yeah.
these parts about myself, what others thought was disgusting, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I love this part about myself. Again, what is
Mm-hmm.
disgust? Our disgust is our suppressed love, passion, and joy. The
Mm-hmm.
expression of that was
Yeah.
shamed, right? So actually, no, I love
Yeah.
these parts about myself, what others thought was disgusting, right? So even if that's like singing in the street, like, oh, who would do that? That's so embarrassing, um so it's like, no, it's normal. And even if you like research what disgust means, if you were to Google it, it says the definition of disgust is strong disapproval. So that's what it really
Gotcha.
is. And I think it's important to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that as well. The disgust that we feel in ourselves is strong disapproval,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be from ourselves or from others, which is, really the main case here is like, having that disapproval from others about our expression.
Mm-hmm. How would you, just wrapping this up here, how would you help people, or what would some tips would you give people that deal with shame and disgust that's coming up for them? What are some steps or tools they can use, um, that you found useful? The integrative dance sounds like one,
Yeah, no,
because that
definitely.
is a big one. And I know for me, I like to do that too, where it's like just the rage dance or just to break up the energies. Um, what else have you found is helpful?
Yeah, that with that being something that I use now as a main tool, but the other tools I also like to use is journaling.
Okay,
So
journaling. Cool.
journaling on the emotions that you feel. That's what I've helped was that is what it has helped me, if I can get that out correctly. Um, yeah, I feel like it's getting it down on paper is really important as well. That's helped me.
What happens when you put it on paper, when you start writing about it? Because I would say I haven't used journaling for that, but I would say like I guess the fear would be I don't want to. face the disgust. Like now I have to look at it, like I have to write it out and admit it to myself. Um, but
Yeah.
what is the benefit of doing
So when I write it out, I tend to ask myself questions around it.
that?
Like,
Gotcha. Okay.
what is this? What is this suppressed emotion? What does it really want to express?
Mm, that's
You know,
powerful.
I
Yeah.
often ask myself that, which is, um, what expression am I limiting myself when I feel certain uncomfortable emotions? Because again, it's the suppressed joy, love, and passion. So it's like something is there within our feminine, masculine energies that we're suppressing. So it's like I ask myself, with this emotion that I'm feeling, what expression am I limiting?
Gotcha.
And what is this emotion or expression communicating that it needs and wants, you know? I think
Those are
that's what
powerful. You guys are
yeah,
listening to this. I would go back and write those questions down. Like what is it trying to express? What is it limiting? What expression is it limiting of me? Because and I see as you're saying that, that's asking yourself those questions is creating awareness around the disgust or the shame. And so it's like you're no longer necessarily identifying with it, but now you're creating that awareness to move through it. Like you said, even though that's not fun, asking those critical questions is where you're gaining that growth. Yeah.
yeah. And this is also something that I've mentioned to my client on this, to a client before on this, which is, you're writing it down, you're journaling, how it makes you feel, what expression it's limiting, what does it need, what does it want. And so with that, with the need, for example, an example there may be, it needs to feel accepted, it needs to feel heard, um, and it needs empathy. And then the want may be, well, it wants to show this expression that it's limiting, whether that be dancing in front of people, or whether that be talking up, um, being assertive, whatever that may
Mm.
be. And then, so I see that as like the journaling part, almost as, I'm not saying it's feminine, but I'm saying, writing down how you're feeling. It may look like a feminine point because it's in stillness. I'm writing this, connecting to my
Gotcha.
body and my heart, and to see what it is. And then I like to add that masculine point to it, which
Mm.
is with addressing my wants and needs through this, is then what is the action steps I can take from this? And that's adding in the masculine energy there
Yeah.
to balance them, right? It's all about
Just
balance,
helping
and
you move forward, right? Yeah.
right, from a place of being. Yeah. So it's
I
about
love that.
balancing those and taking those action steps of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this, wrote this down. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm
Nice.
going to reach
Yeah.
out to someone. I'm going to spend time doing this for myself, wherever that may be.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I see too, this is all, not only is this helping you build your intimacy with yourself, which is helping you love yourself more, it's also helping you build courage because it takes courage to sit down and do these processes if you've never done them before. And all you're used to is just feeling shame or disgust or being hard on yourself, self hating, being perfectionist, and or judging yourself. It takes a lot of courage to sit with that uncomfortable emotion and move through it. So.
Yeah, and I will say as a third point of what helps me, and again we touched base on this. You mentioned about this as well, like holding space for your emotions to just be present in the body. If it's if it's not through the dance where you're kind of allowing it to, you're forcing it to kind of, by moving the energy, right, to surface. If you don't need that, where you're you know you're ready, just in a place of stillness, then come into meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or just, with breath work, because
Mm-hmm.
then, you're holding that space for it.
Right.
But if you're feeling that actually I'm doing the breath work and I'm doing the meditation and I'm still struggling to feel, right,
Mm-hmm.
or to feel empathy for these emotions, then that's when integrative dancing is a great tool because we're really allowing it to surface and express everything that we wanted to express in the moments. When you really wanted to express anger or whatever it may have been, or really wanted to speak up and be heard, as an example, but instead we, stopped talking. We were
Silenced or
muted. Yeah,
something.
silenced.
Yeah.
That has an impact on us. Every time that happens, that has an impact on us when we were children. And those emotional charges are still there. And so it's like, this is a good time now to just let that expression out.
That's beautiful. Alma, thank you so much for your time and being able to come on and share your wisdom with us. Where can people reach you if they want to reach out and book a call with you for a session to work with you?
Through my Facebook. So
Okay.
Alma.
Okay.
The name is in the recording, so best to use that because it's a difficult spelling. But yeah, you can reach out to me there, and I'll be happy to answer the questions as well from the audiences.
Awesome. And I'm sure we'll probably link your name into the title here too, so people can just click on your name and reach out to
you. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Ricky. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Peace.